Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to tackle something that honestly is fundamental for anyone working in the Canadian legal world: how to master legal citation.
Ever feel like you're lost in a sea of legal documents? How do you actually prove your point with authority? Well, today we're going to demystify the one skill that underpins every single powerful legal argument: proper citation. And look, it doesn't matter if you're a first-year law student or a seasoned pro. Getting this right is the absolute key to making your work credible and persuasive.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with why this whole citation thing even matters. Then we'll get into our main tool, the McGill Guide. After that, we'll break down how to cite cases. That's a big one. And finally, we'll cover all those other legal sources you'll run into. All right, let's dive in.
Okay, first things first. Before we even touch on the nitty-gritty of formatting and rules, let's just stop and ask the big question. Why does this matter so much? Why is everyone so obsessed with proper citation being the bedrock of legal writing?
It really boils down to two fundamental purposes. First, it's about your credibility. It shows that your work is built on a solid foundation, not just something you made up. And second, it's about respect for your reader. You're giving them a clear roadmap so they can go and find your sources for themselves.
I like to think of it like this. Imagine your argument is a big tower. Well, each citation is a block in its foundation. If you get one of those blocks wrong, the whole thing starts to get wobbly. So this isn't just about following some arbitrary rules for the sake of it. It's about making sure your work is absolutely trustworthy and, ultimately, way more persuasive.
Okay, so if the goal is uniformity and credibility, how do we actually get there? How do we make sure that everyone all across the Canadian legal world is speaking the same citation language?
Well, the answer is this book right here, The Canadian Guide to Uniform Legal Citation. But let's be real, everyone just calls it the McGill Guide. It's now in its 10th edition, and it is the definitive authority for citing legal stuff anywhere in Canada, full stop.
And don't just take my word for it. As former Supreme Court Justice Ian Benny pointed out, the guide is what equips the entire legal community to be on the same page. Think about it. It's the one national standard that ensures everything is clear and efficient, whether you're a judge in Vancouver reading a memo or a student in Halifax reading a law journal.
All right, let's dive into what can feel like the trickiest part of all this: citing jurisprudence, or, case law. But the good news is the McGill Guide gives us a really clear hierarchy to follow, so it's not as scary as it looks.
So to really get a grip on citing cases, you kind of have to understand how things have changed. Back in the day, everything was reporter-based. That means a citation literally pointed you to a physical printed book on a shelf. But then the internet happened, and with it came the neutral citation. And this was a total game changer, because now a citation can point you directly to the court's decision online.
The best way to think about a neutral citation? It's like a case's unique permanent home address, and it's assigned by the court itself, right at the source. It was literally designed for the digital age, which is why it makes finding cases on databases like CanLEI or Westlaw incredibly easy.
So the 10th edition of the McGill Guide lays out a super clear hierarchy for us. Here's how it goes. Your number one top priority is always the neutral citation, if one exists. If there isn't one, your next best bet is the CanLEI citation. In fact, because CanLEI is so comprehensive and totally free, it's often all you need. Only after you've checked for those two would you even think about turning to the old-school print reporters.
But what if you need to point your reader to a specific spot in the case? Like a killer quote or the one sentence where the judge makes the key ruling. That's where a pinpoint comes in. And the gold standard here is super simple. You just use the word "at" followed by a paragraph number. It's way better than a page number because the paragraphs are the same no matter where you read the judgment.
Okay, let's try putting this all together. Let's say we're building what's called a parallel citation, which includes both the new neutral citation and an older reporter citation. Here are all the pieces. Based on what we've just talked about, how would you put these in the right order? Take a second and think about it.
All right, you got it? The correct order starts with the style of cause. That just tells you who the parties are. Right after that comes the neutral citation, the year, the court, and that unique decision number. And then finally, you tack on the reporter citation. In this case, that's volume 569 of the Alberta Reports, starting on page 148. Just like that. Perfect.
Of course, legal arguments aren't just built on cases, right? So let's take a look at how these same ideas of clarity and order work when you're citing other essential legal sources.
And yeah, the McGill Guide really covers the whole shebang.
We're talking primary sources like legislation, statutes and acts of parliament, and also a ton of crucial secondary sources, things like academic articles, those big legal encyclopedias, and textbooks.
One of the most powerful secondary sources you can use are these encyclopedic digests. They are absolutely fantastic tools for getting a solid overview of a whole area of law. The guide tells you exactly how to cite them, but here's a pro tip. You'll find the main ones, the Canadian Encyclopedic Digest, or CED, on Westlaw, and Halsbury's Laws of Canada over on Lex's Advanced Quick Law.
Okay, a quick heads up for when you're citing periodicals, like law journals. The McGill Style has some pretty unique rules here, and they're probably different from what you're used to, like MLA or APA. For example, you write the author's name exactly as it appears on the article. And a big one, you never, ever italicize any part of the citation.
So when you get right down to it, a citation is so much more than just a reference. It's the very foundation of your argument. A good one tells your reader that your work is solid, that you've done the research, and that your argument deserves to be trusted. Is your foundation solid? Because when you master this, you're not just following rules, you're building a more powerful, more compelling case.